Thank you very much, Comrade Mahlengi. Good afternoon, Comrade JJ, Comrade Cameron, and members of the media. The ANC will not falter and never allow any attempt to bring back apartheid through a back door. We have noted as the ANC the intention of the Democratic Alliance to conduct provincial hearings on what it is terming a provincial powers bill starting on Monday. As a liberation movement that has fought for over centuries and many decades with the masses of our people to defeat apartheid and colonialism in order to establish what we today enjoy as a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and a prosperous South Africa. We call on all our people in our country, but particularly in the Western Cape, to reject this bill. Our republic has a constitution which was adopted by the Constitutional Assembly unanimously, representing the people of South Africa through their democratically elected representatives. And the preamble of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa may remind all of us that it states that we, the people of South Africa, as I quote, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. We therefore, as it continues, through our freely elected representatives, adopt this constitution as the supreme law of the Republic, so as to heal the divisions of the past and to establish a society that is based on democratic values, social justice, fundamental human rights, lay the foundations for a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people and every citizen is equally protected by law, improve the quality of life of all citizens, and free the potential of each person, and build a united and a democratic South Africa that is able to take its rightful place as a sovereign state in the family of nations. I close quote. The Constitution also further outlines and clearly outlines the powers and functions of the three spheres of government. It laid down the principle of cooperative government, and it states boldly that it intends to regress in an imperative way to advance all those who have suffered unfair discrimination. The DA today, therefore, represent the relics of the past, the apartheid past, a past that was characterized by the brutal violence and the dispossession of land and wealth of the indigenous people and the majority by colonial oppressors. They governed through a divide and rule, through racist policies such as the Group Areas Act, which forcibly removed our entire nations from places like District 6, Ndabeni, Constantia, Claremont, Blowbend, near to Düsseldorp in the Western Cape. And now today the DA wants to further divide our province and our country once again. They talk of devolution of powers, but they mean federalism and a separate apartheid republic of the Western Cape. In this, they are working with like-minded anti-transformation forces and right-wing conservatives like the Cape Exit movement. In fact, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, John Steenhuisen, promised the Cape Exit a referendum on Cape independence in return for their votes. We will never go back to the dark days of racial segregation, exploitation, discrimination, and economic deprivation. All three of the Western Cape legislature legal advisors have declared the bill unconstitutional. This is actually a rebellion from within the legislature against the Democratic Alliance. We salute them for being true to our constitution. The DA has failed to use the powers they already have to transform the Western Cape in its entirety and create equality, provide equitable service delivery, quality education, health care to the majority. In the Western Cape, less than 3% of agricultural land is owned by blacks, African, colored, and Indian combined. This figure is worse than any other province in South Africa. In basic education, a provincial competency we see that live the reality on ongoing neglect of public schools on the Cape Flats and in the rural areas of the Cape. Schools are overcrowded. Strategies to keep out Africans and colored learners from the known Model C schools still persist and prevail. They fail to provide enough maths and science teachers to schools in need. Gang violence and drugs negatively affecting schools. They are not a priority in these areas for the DA administration. So this neglect has now come home to roost. The Western Cape has now dropped to 5th place in matric results. When the ANC governed the Western Cape, and the Western Cape was constant on top. In health, they failed to build a new hospital on the Cape Flats. At the same time, they are opposed to the National Health Bill, which will ensure that there's a healthy quality care for everybody. The people of Western Cape are part of a united South Africa. The plan is outrageously unconstitutional. It is nonetheless consistent with the racially divisive Democratic Alliance. It's in their character, it's in the nature of the DA. The DA leader, Helen Zille, has referred to people coming to the Western Cape as refugees and has justified colonialism. This threat continues more brazenly under Steenhuisen, who welcomes Zionists, apartheid apologists, and killers who open arms to migrate to their province. The recent provincial government promotion on the program with Dr. Dek is a case in point. Or perhaps we do not have to look that far. Just yesterday, Steenhuisen did what he believes in his heart is invoking racial stereotypes to discredit Gauteng crime wardens. The DA is a party of the Swart Gefar and colonial revival. When it had the chance, the DA refused to set up a house for traditional leaders in the Western Cape. In fact, totally denying the existence of the descendants of the Khoi and San and other traditional leaders and forebears traditionally of that land in the Western Cape. The ANC calls again on all the people of South Africa to see DA and their moonshot allies for what they are, a party that yearns for apartheid and colonial privilege and wants to fight to preserve this privilege and resist transformation of our country into a national democratic South Africa. We fought and defeated apartheid. We will defeat this bill and it will never become law. We will defend the constitution of our forebears and we will fight racism wherever it rears its ugly head. The ANC's Freedom Charter says the South Africa we live in belongs to all who lives in it. That's the end of our statement, and I thank you, Comrade Mahleng. Thank you very much for the questions. Thanks, Comrade Mahleng. Well, I'm going to leave all the provincial questions really to the provincial leadership. They will best elaborate on it. But Moloko, the question should possibly be saying, what does the Constitution of South Africa be? Or what is it saying in terms of federalism? It doesn't have federalism. It actually has got quasi-federal powers. In fact, all powers, if you look into the Constitution, they are centralized at national. They are devolved at a provincial and a local level, to an extent of even defining what will be the role of the province. If you go to the Constitution, you look into Schedule 4 and Schedule 5, it tells you if they are giving you, for example, that you must manage a park on behalf of a tourism department. It's well defined in the Constitution. It further mandates national on Section 44 of the Constitution to say, develop those powers and legislation for provinces. In further sections 52 and below, it mandates the national to even assess the competencies of the provinces and local to do their functions. Maybe a question the ANC should be asking itself, if also in opposition, in the years the Western Cape has regressed, if we have done, is to hold them accountable for the things that are defined in the Constitution that were never done. A time has come for the ANC itself to hold the DA accountable for what the Constitution defines and how the allocation of the funds. You go to the budget of the Eastern Cape, of the Western Cape today. You compare a rand to rand between Constantia and Gugulethu. It's glaring. The disparities. I'm not talking about something. Every budget is an open book in South Africa. You download their budget, you will see what they are spending, whether it's at the local sphere. If you compare what is in the city center, in Gugulethu and the city of Cape Town, but the African National Congress is saying today, it is time that we go back to the founders and the forebears who drafted the Constitution, informed by we are coming from an unequal past, where services on the basis of your color, of your skin and creed, you were not receiving them. Is the Western Cape today saying it has equalized and has given an opportunity to everybody else to change the current setup of the Constitution in South Africa? And the answer is the African National Congress we have is a no. They need to utilize the powers that they have, the fiscal money that they receive, into the areas that they still need to develop, rather than ensuring that a Western Cape passes a bill. But secondly, their very own legislator advisors, legal advisors, 3 of them. In fact, if simply put, it's an illegal show that is starting tomorrow. Because you have experts, you say, I'm thinking of tabling this. Do you think it cuts? And they say, no, it doesn't. Hopefully because they believe they will threaten them to say what they would want to be, they want them to say. But we have credible men and women who said, constitutionally, it will not pass. And we shall see fit that it doesn't pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much, members of the media. Just want to say, just to add on what Comrade Thembi has said, the DA knows too that their bill is unconstitutional. The DA is using this bill and public hearings on the eve of the elections to mobilize and appease its white conservative voters. Comrade Cameron will tell you, the first people to propose a bill of this nature at the provincial legislature was the Freedom Front Plus. Then the DA shot it down. Days later, the DA came with this bill themselves. Now they want to overtake the Freedom Front Plus to demonstrate to the white conservative voters that they are having their best interest. So the DA too knows that this bill will not hold. The second thing, Comrade Cameron will respond on the route we are taking, both in the NCOP legislature and legally. The people of the Western Cape are ready to give a different party an opportunity to lead the Western Cape. Ever since the DA has been in charge, the Western Cape, we can refer to it as a two-tailed province. A province for the rich and a province for the poor. And since it has been in charge, Comrade Thembi has explained, the budget is biased towards the affluent areas. And our people are ready to give anybody an opportunity to lead. And we are that party. And I always say, when I address the PEC, the next premier after the elections will report to the PEC of the Western Cape. We are ready. Our machinery ready. We're not preoccupied about our subjective issues. We're ready to liberate the people of the Western Cape once more. The judgment of the ICJ and the Gaza situation has also put us in a proper pedestal to change the situation of the Western Cape around. There are certain concrete proposals to do things differently that we have taken to national, which I'm not at liberty to speak about them now. The national office bearers have confirmed that they will meet the office bearers of the Western Cape before the end of this week. We want to make certain proposals that we must do things differently and not be preoccupied about our egos. The ANC in the Western Cape in particular is the only political party that lives amongst and with the Muslim community. Even during December holidays, it was the ANC that had programs throughout rolling in the province, dealing with the situation and the solidarity with the people of Palestine. The last thing I want to say is, you might be aware that on Friday we had a provincial press conference with our alliance partners. We are rolling a program to reject this bill. We have engaged with several sectors, particularly on the powers that are targeted by the DA, the police, the transport, and so on. Those sectors will come out themselves, starting from Monday with the first public hearing in Worcester until the last public hearing on the 5th in Beaufort West. All those sectors, police, nurses, the transport sector, will go out and reject that bill. We have a capacity to mobilize them. We have engaged with all these sectors. We are also working in collaboration with other opposition parties in the legislature, the Al-Jamaa, Good, the EFF, and so on, united all of us in an anti-DA coalition to defeat this bill. So the result after will demonstrate that our people reject the fact that the Western Cape must be a republic for white conservative people. We are not ready to return back to Bantustanis. Thank you very much.
So stand on
It depends if you're short.
no, so sit down. It's for our head of DOP. No, thank you very much. I don't know the names of all the members of the media, but I think the first issue, and thank you very much to Comrade Kadimeng, the provincial chair, and our head of DCRP, Comrade Mashlengi, for this opportunity. I think the first question which I should try and address was about what legal steps. Now, as we may be aware, what we have at the moment is a bill, right? It's a bill, and bills can basically be introduced in three ways. The first is if the executive, i.e. the provincial executive or the provincial cabinet, brings a bill to the legislature. The second is what Comrade JJ referred to, what Peter Murray did from the Freedom Front. He brought a private member's bill, which, as he indicated, the DA shot down. And then the third way, which has never been used in the provincial legislature before, is a committee bill, where a committee, say, of education looks at something and thinks there's a problem, says, okay, we're going to bring a bill. Now, this committee bill was never ever discussed in the Standing Committee on the Premier, yet the DA chairperson, Mr. Fry, simply arrived with a draft bill without any memoranda which has to accompany a bill, and they're claiming this now as a so-called committee bill. But we have consulted, and the issue is that if you try and interdict a bill, your chances of success are probably zero, because it's still a bill. But if and I, not really a betting person, but we all know that this is never ever going to become a law. There will be public hearings, and their objective is obviously to appeal to the constituency that JJ was referring to. But even if we have a situation where the Premier of the Western Cape has to sign and assent to a bill, there is a provision in the Constitution which allows 20% of the members of a legislature, and the ANC together with opposition parties is way above that, to apply to the Constitutional Court for an order declaring that all or part of a provincial act is unconstitutional. We don't think it will even get that far, but there is that provision. And I think the interesting thing about all of this is that the legislature, not the ANC, the legislature has 3 legal advisors. And every single one of them, as Comrade Kadimeng has indicated, declared this bill to be unconstitutional. And we've never had a situation where a bill has gone further once the legal advisors have actually not authorized it. So clearly this is just an election exercise. So I think on the issue of the interdict, it was then felt not to interdict because you can't really interdict a bill, but there are many mechanisms, such as the one I've mentioned, to actually make sure that this bill never becomes law. But what we have also done as leader of opposition for the ANC, we've written to the Speaker, pointing out a whole number of concerns about procedure, and actually have also approached lawyers for advice here on actually taking this to the Auditor General as well as the Budget Committee. Because what they've done by saying public hearings must go ahead, and they're costing about 450,000 Rand for these public hearings. The Speaker himself, as a custodian, he knows the rules. He knows that you cannot take a bill that has been declared unconstitutional on public hearings. So we believe that the Speaker, Christopher Fry from the DA, Isaac Seleku, the chair of the ad hoc committee, must be held accountable for wasteful expenditure here, to spend this money going forward. We have also been very encouraged by the fact that our comrades in the cabinet have raised serious concerns and have indicated that they would be looking at the issue of the breach of cooperative governance and actually not even pursuing intergovernmental relations. So we believe that this bill will never pass muster. We've got the legislature strategy and we will hold back. But our prediction is that this will not even come back to Parliament after these public hearings. But we are ready, in any eventuality, look at formal legal steps after this particular process. I think the only other issue that I really need to respond to is just to back up our chair on the issue of the work that is going on in the Western Cape around the elections, and in particular the issue of the Muslim community. I think what often people forget is that compared to any other organization, the ANC is the only organization in our province and elsewhere that has a presence in every ward. We have volunteers who don't get paid. We have elected structures. We have an alliance that we work with. We have strong civic organizations. And what is happening because of the leadership of the national executive is that there is a motivation and an energy that we haven't seen for a while in our province. And we don't need to tell the media about our own dirty laundry and our own problems and so on, but we have a situation where people have been energized by the steps which our national leadership is taking, the incredible stand to take as a developing country our place globally with the ICJ action has resulted in an interesting phenomena. The ANC has always had a strong presence in the Muslim community. You would recall when Ibrahim Rasool was our premier at that particular point in time, and because of the work and the support that there was, we had support from a majority in the Muslim community, not more than 50%, but a majority. And I think some of the challenges that we faced have also, resulted in some people moving away. But what we are finding almost unequivocally in the mosques, in community meetings, and this is not only a Muslim thing, but it's a huge issue in the Muslim community, that people are saying, never, never again are they going to vote for the DA, those that did, right? And this is because of simple things, like we have a situation in our legislature after the war broke out in the Ukraine. The legislature actually lit up the color, the legislature building in the colors of Ukraine. We then tried to have a debate about Palestine. They refused to even debate the issue in about Palestine. Secondly, they refused to put up the Palestinian colors in terms of the genocide that was happening. So those contradictions are apparent. When people mobilize to put a flag up in Lavender Hill, then the DA is finding ways of taking that flag down. We've had situations in our schools where some teachers, Comrade Mahlengi, in state schools have actually refused that children can actually use the colors of the Palestinian flag. In a state school, we had a Zionist fascist from Sea Point who physically attacked and abused. And I mean, race we know is important here. This Zionist is white. The woman who had Palestinian stickers on her flag, she had her door slashed, insulted. So people are seeing these things. And I think that what we are seeing is that there's a strong anti-DA sentiment emerging because of their contradictions, because of their double standards, because of the clear stand that they've taken not to condemn the genocide. And that has a huge impact. And I think what we're beginning to see now, like all voters are concerned about service delivery, they're concerned about different issues. And I think Muslim voters are rejecting, by and large, in mosques, people are talking about the DA and what they've done, the double standards. But voters are also concerned about what we have to offer. And I think with the stand at the ICJ, with what our government is doing in terms of the renewal program, there is a growing support of people who had possibly left us in that community that are coming back. So the notion of the ANC not being competitive in the Western Cape, you must remember that in 2004, the ANC got 40%. And I think, as our chairperson has said, the work that's going on the ground, the enthusiasm, it's about turnout, and some of the things which are actually happening are helping to galvanize our support base. Right today, and this is the last thing I'll say, because we are involved in the election campaign, yesterday and today, all of our regions and what we call local election structures are busy canvassing. They're doing electronic registration of voters. And the enthusiasm is there. We will then roll into next week with this campaign against the bill. The 3rd and the 4th, we have voter registration. And I think you are clearly going to see the results of a more cohesive, a more united, and a more focused ANC Western Cape. As we've heard, our national leadership, I think it's quite unprecedented that at an NEC meeting there's a breakaway to have a specific briefing, because this actually isn't only a Western Cape issue. What the DA is doing is trying to almost balkanize this country, playing into different sentiments which actually undermine, the united and democratic nature of our country. And people are seeing that. So from our point of view, we just want to thank our national leadership for addressing this issue. We regard that as national investment in our province. And you will see over the next while many more issues being exposed about the Democratic Alliance and what they're actually doing in regard to corruption, nepotism, abuse of budgets in our province. So many times, Comrade Kadimeng, the province and the city, or the city in particular, gets money for housing, and they don't spend that money. They have to hand it back. Why? Because they don't actually want to upgrade informal settlements in the Western Cape. It's as true as that. The DA does not like black people. It's simple. That is what we're facing. In the Premier's office, two out of 65 senior managers are black, and an underrepresentation of the colored community. And that's what's happening in our province. And this is part of exposing that. Thank you.
I'm going to try and be brief, Comrade Mahlengi. I'm going to start with the first question, Thando. The process, yes, of the declaration in terms of the IGR bill, which we oversee as the department when there are disputes in between the spheres or even amongst the spheres themselves, in terms of the delineation of the powers. And then you take it through a mediation process if departments or municipalities or whoever could be able to find themselves. And that's the process that is being undertaken. You will recall it actually relates to human settlement with the city of Cape Town in terms of what Comrade JJ spoke about. Make the land available, will make the money available, we have the beneficiaries who are in informal settlement. And the other one will say, I don't want this with my land, but I want the other land. And there are policies and parameters in which you would still want to put people in what we call habitable and convenient spaces, so that they don't spend most of what they are getting in traveling and shuttling to and from work. So we're at a discussion level, and I think as it gets to be concluded, there's a process that the IGR section 4679 dictates what needs to be followed and steps in how you would want to resolve the issues. Look, you can't vote or amend something that has not been tabulated. If the DA was serious and you want to test the ANC, if it doesn't have the appetite of discussing constitutional amendment, you should be saying to me and the African National Congress, the DA has placed a bill on federalism in Parliament, and the ANC has used its majority to reject it. Even without that being done, we will reject it, yes. Precisely because, in our view, it doesn't represent what is the best for the people. I often say to people who want to compare on what is being done, and I challenge Mluku now to go and compare the budget of the city of Johannesburg on what it allocates to its citizens, and compare the budget of the city of Cape Town on what it allocates to its citizens. Look, there is no corner in this country where you will not find a pothole. If your measure of saying a good governance at a municipal or provincial level will be that there's no water that is leaking, then you wouldn't find that place. But what do we measure? We measure systems and processes in place that are directed by vision and policy to better the lives of people. That's what we measure. And if you measure that, the Western Cape falls under. There is no desire not to change the lives of the people. But here we're talking about an issue. In fact, if you would want to say, the law says to the city of Cape Town, apply for municipal policing. Why don't they do that? City of Johannesburg have, city of eThekwini, they've rolled out almost all the metros besides Buffalo City and Mangaung, there's two smaller metros who have not been, they've applied themselves. Can you imagine Mangaung with 49 wards applying for that and the Western Cape not applying for that? They've got the money, they've got the reserves, they can do it. Where does the Cape Flats fall under? The city of Cape Town. They can apply. You should be saying to me, maybe the ANC-led government has refused their application. No, they didn't. So they can solve the gang violence. They have the money, they have the resources. Maybe they could even apply, which the law allows. We are incapacitated in this area. SAPS Schedule 40 says, add into us so that we could be able to apply. And that's what the Gauteng government has done. They are adding into what the city of Johannesburg and their K9 units are dealing with in trying to fight the crime. Why are they different and acting indifferently than what our constitution would want us to dictate? We do not have federalism. We are governed by the constitution. So if we're going to flip and flap every time as it suits everybody else, then we might as well put the constitution in the dustbin. If I say there must no longer be Christians in South Africa, it's okay. There's no constitution. No one's right is permitted or is allowed in South Africa. But we're a united, non-sexist, non-racial South Africa. And that's what we fought for.
Just two things. The first thing that should add to Comrade Thembi, towards the end of last year, the Human Settlement Department of the Western Cape returned 200 million to the national treasury, 200 million, for its incapacity to build houses, particularly in the black working class areas. But these houses were not going to be built in Constantia. They returned that money, but they don't have appetite to spend that money in the African areas. Now, the first objective of the Provincial Powers Bill says they are putting this Powers Bill because they want to correct all what the ANC cannot do. They have not yet presented a bill to correct what they are unable to do. They want to correct, they have a set of powers given to provinces. They are unable to deliver on those powers. They want more powers of the national government to mess them up. Because I'm saying, our people in the Western Cape are languishing in squalor. They stay in informal settlement. Some of them do not have basic services, but the department returned back 200 million. It's unjustifiable. Now, the last question I want to answer is about the Jewish people. Yes, the Jewish people are not a homogeneous group. There is a Jewish for Free Palestine. We are, as the ANC, also there engaging with the South African Board of Deputies, Jewish Board of Deputies, and they understand where we come from. And not all of them, even they are Zionists. Some of them are committed to the two-state solution. So yes, many amongst Jewish people appreciate the contribution of the ANC and its government to the resolution of the situation in Palestine. And yes, in their numbers, they will vote ANC.
Yeah, I'm sorry. In fact, my committee is seized with that. LNG, Legislature and Governance, is seized not only from a level of provinces, even from a level of municipalities, some which you think they shouldn't necessarily be standing as provinces. I mean, rather as municipalities in the current state that in which we are at. And that work, it steadily will be receiving reports on what the Municipal Demarcation Board is doing and featuring them all. And I do believe at the correct time, the ANC will be able to give heed into that.
So the discussion is still there from the ANC?
The discussion is, yes, the number may not necessarily be what was initially intended at the NGC and the National Conference, but on the table is the discussion of a single public service, you recall, that harmonizes or rather put every sphere of government into one to actually assist government to plan and implement better. That's the focus in terms of, so you don't consult over many times, but you rather are consolidated and move into an implementation spot. And you look into provinces and also into the local sphere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to, I think it was the reporter from the ENCA who was mentioning some of the powers that they mention in this bill. You know, I actually struggle to call it a bill because it's actually just a flyer. It's like a pamphlet. It's not actually a bill, but they do mention the issue of energy. Now, I'm not sure whether colleagues are aware, but in the city of Cape Town, some energy is provided directly by Eskom. There's other energy that the city of Cape Town provides, and obviously there are NERSA surcharges. Now, what has happened in the city of Cape Town is that the DA-led city has actually placed an increase over and above what was agreed, what was determined by NERSA. So, in fact, they're continuing to charge that, and there's a court case going on at the moment around that. But what a lot of people don't realize is that if you go and spend 100 Rand in the city of Cape Town and you are getting power directly from Eskom, you basically can get 40% more units than if you take that same 100 Rand and buy prepaid from the city of Cape Town. So they are calling for energy as a competence. They have set up an ad hoc committee of the legislature, and they refuse to actually call to that ad hoc committee, NERSA, ESCOM, and the city to actually expose that. So people in our province, you talk about unhappiness with the DA and issues of why should it be that the poorer people of the city of Cape Town across all race groups are having to pay more because of a surcharge over and above NERSA by the city of Cape Town. That is the reality. And all the money that they are spending is just for consultants to help this municipality to develop a plan, this. But actually in terms of generation, our basic point from the opposition as the ANC is that the people of the Western Cape will benefit more from cooperation with national. Comrade Kadimeng and the president, they've got this district development model where they're trying to make sure that we coordinate seamless government. Do you know that the DA rejects that? They actually reject it. And I think our people are beginning to say, but you know what? If we had not the blame and complain, yes, policing, gangsterism is a huge issue. But when you set out to fight the national government, I think the people of the Western Cape are suffering. We need a situation where we embrace working together with our municipalities, with the national government. That is in the interests of the majority in the Western Cape. What they are doing is basically dividing our province and denying the benefits from a cooperative approach. And the last thing I want to mention is that one of the functions which the bill doesn't actually mention, but it's the issue of international relations. One of their think tanks, the South African Institute of Race Relations, or one of those, actually produced an article saying, no, not only must the Western Cape have this and that, but they must be in charge of international relations. There was a response from Comrade Alvin Botha. So can you imagine with the situation at the moment where the DA would then want to have international diplomatic relations and undermine the sovereign nature of our country? The impact that we are making internationally is because of the cohesive approach of our national government. So you can see where this is going. They talk devolution. They actually want federalism, which, as our Comrade Kadimeng explained, is not in the Constitution. Kadesa actually rejected federalism. We come from a history of Bantustans, and Kadesa had rejected that. So we shouldn't try and invent a notion that the Constitution actually provides for federalism. It doesn't. So that is what they actually, so they talk devolution, they want federalism, but actually they are on the path, according to them, to appease the right wing, to have an independent Cape Volksstaat. That's actually where these right wing elements are going, and we will never allow that, as our leadership have said. Thanks.